let's take a quick moment and talk about how a blog is going to function. It's quite a little bit different, I'm sure, than the way that you are used to working, but once you kind of get the hang of it, everything's going to be super easy. You'll see how flexible and how easy all of this actually is. So what I'm looking at right now is actually the blog that you and I, believe it or not, are going to wind up creating. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of graphical content in here. There's a whole lot in terms of text content and all the rest of it, right? It's pretty wild, pretty cool stuff, right? And by the way, we hardly used any code. I think it's safe to say we didn't use any code, although there's a tiny little bit that we do wind up using to actually put all of this together, if you can believe it. It's pretty cool. Now, let me show you this here. What we have sort of in the main area of the blog are our posts, our blog posts. So I have a bunch of posts that I created here, working with color and Flash and understanding Flash's drawing models and so on, right? And this is the blog loop, by the way. This is what I was referring to earlier as the blog loop. So this post here, working with color in Flash, is the most recent post. And prior to that, I created understanding Flash's drawing models. And then prior to that, we had creating shapes in Flash. This is the chronological order of our blog, right? And again, that's really one of the big draws to getting into blogging in the first place, right? And later on, you'll see how we can go about controlling how many posts actually show up on this page. Maybe I want to set it up so that only the most recent post shows up on the front page of my blog, right? We could certainly achieve something like that, right? So that's the idea here. Now, this is what I would call the front end of the blog, if that makes sense, the live side of the blog. When you go to my blog, this is what you're going to see, right? But what's happening, though, is we also have what I call the back end. What's happening sort of in this administration portion of your blog. You can refer to it as the blog admin, or you could call it the admin console, or simply your blog's back end, whatever you want to call it. And I have that opened up inside another tab here inside Firefox. This is the back end of WordPress. And this is where we can go about making changes to our blog. We can apply some customization. For example, we can change what's referred to as the blog theme, which is the presentation, the styling of the blog. We can create new posts, write new posts. We can create static pages. We can moderate comments. Basically, all the meat and potatoes, all the guts, is all happening inside this interface here. And I'm going to tour you through this interface in just a little while so you kind of get a feel for it. But that's really the idea, is I can come in here and I can control what's happening on the live side of the blog. I hope that makes sense. So when you're surfing around and you are visiting other people's blogs, of course, what you're doing is you're looking at the live side of their blog. But always remember that with every blog, they have their own back end, their own admin console for their blog as well. And it'll function in a very similar way to the admin console for your blog. So there you go. So I hope that all makes sense. Again, it's a kind of a different way of working, especially if you're coming from a traditional web design background. Perhaps you're used to building static pages in Dreamweaver. That's really kind of my background. That's where I'm coming from anyway. So admittedly for myself, it took maybe, well, it wasn't too long, maybe half a day or so, just trying to get used to working with sort of this back end here and seeing the results that I would actually have on the live blog. And that's really not an issue with WordPress. It's really more myself, because when I sort of fall into a way of working, it's hard for me to kind of get out of that way of thinking. So this is kind of a different way of working and a different way of approaching web design. But that said, it's unbelievably awesome and it's unbelievably powerful once you kind of get used to it all.